Hello guys. In this part I want to show you the DHCP role in the Windows Server environment. The DHCP enables you to assign dynamically IP addresses to your clients, so they automatically get their network configuration like IP address, subnet mask, DNS servers and all the other stuff. For this reason I want to make an isolated environment where I can show you the DNS server of Windows and don't affect the other network here. For this reason I turned off the co-op server 1. I go to settings here and I want to add a virtual network adapter here. But we will do this later, because before we do this we need a virtual network. We go to the Hyper-V Manager, to Virtual Switch Management, and we will create a private virtual network here. Private means that only the VMs connected to this private network could see each other. They can't get into the internet and they can't get to the other network here of my VLAN or my Wi-Fi in this case. I say create new virtual switch and I call it private LAN, for example. Say private network here and say apply here. Then I could disable unknown extensions here, say apply and click OK. Then now I go to the co-op server 1 and add this private LAN here, but I will add it. I won't use the existing network card here. I will add a new virtual network card here and give this to the private LAN. I disable certain things here and the protected network here. Then I say apply, and now the co-op server has two network cards for my Wi-Fi and for my private LAN here. Then I boot it. And I log in here. And I will turn this server here off now, because I want to add this to the private LAN too. So I go to File, Settings, Add Hardware, Network Adapter, Add. I choose the private LAN here. I disable this stuff here. Say apply and OK. Then I boot the server again. Then I will log in here. And now if I try something like ipconfig, all you will see here a new network card, and because there is no DHCP server now on this network here, you get a so-called APIPA address from a Microsoft server that is running in the Microsoft Windows service that is running in the background and assigns dynamically IP addresses to your local computer if there is no other DHCP server in your network and you haven't set any static IP address here. So I get this 169.254.x.epsilon, and you have to ignore it. Here will happen the same. Because now we have here now two networks. Then I go to my first server here. I go to the server manager, and I will go to the network connections, and I want to identify my connection here. So this Ethernet 2 is my private LAN, and this is my, let's call it Wi-Fi. So now I go to my server manager and say tools DHCP. But before we continue here, we should assign an appropriate local IP address here, for example, like this one here. Don't have a default gateway at the moment, but I will enter, for example, this one here, and our preferred DNS server R is my server here. Yes, we want this IP configuration here, and say OK. Now you check this here, and you have your configuration here. Then I go to the DHCP here, and I will check the server properties here for the server here, and you see where the database of your DHCP server and the backup path is. The next thing here is the IPv4. I go to the properties, and here you have some options here. And one important thing, in my opinion here, is the so-called DNS dynamic updates. DNS dynamic updates enable the communication between the DHCP server and your DNS server here. So if, for example, a client gets a certain IP address here assigned, then the DHCP server communicates with your DNS server here, if it's on the same machine, what makes really much sense. Then your DHCP server makes or manages automatically your A records here, so that, for example, your client 1 with the IP address here is also listed in the DNS server here, and the names of your PCs in your environment can be resolved. So you should enable the dynamic updates if you can here. For example, here I will, for demo purposes, I will enable here the non-secure and the secure ones, and you have to do this for every zone file you see here. So also here, and also here for IPv4. If this doesn't work for demo purposes, I will use always dynamically update DNS records here. say apply, and click OK. Then I right click here and say new scope, next, and here I say, for example, DHCP range 172.17.1.x.epsilon. Say next, and say the start IP address is, for example, 172.17.1.1. The end IP address is 172.17.1.200, for example. I would let this how it is at the moment. I won't change this here. In the next step, you can make exclusions, for example, from this IP range here. I won't do this now. Here you can say a least duration. Least duration says the client how often or how long this IP address, this dynamic IP address, is assigned to the client. So in this case, the client has to contact the DHCP server between those 8 days to ask for a new IP address, or if the DHCP server allows that the client has the same IP address for another 8 days. So for example, if you have more clients and a high fluctuation of clients, it may be useful to change the settings here, or what also could be useful is to use something like 8 hours, if this is possible, yes. Or what I do for private networks is 24 hours, or in this case you use 1 hour. So every client has to ask every day for a new IP address, or to stay on this IP address for another day. Exceptions, for example, are reboots and shutdowns. So if the client changes the network, or you plug the Ethernet cable off and on, then the client has to ask the DHCP server again, obviously. So I set this to 1 day here, say next. Configure this now, I say next. I could add a router. I don't have a router at the moment, so I let this empty here, I say next. Then I could enter a parent domain if I have one, for example corp.zz. And here I can enter the DNS server if I have one. This is the IP address here. I say next. I don't have any Win servers here, and yes, I want to activate this scope now. I say finish, and now I will right click, go to properties and check my settings here. What you should not do, I think, is to change the least duration for unlimited, because this could be a pain. For example, here I can assign about 200 IP addresses, and if I have 300 clients or 400 clients, after the 200 client, the 201st client won't get any IP address anymore, and can't access the network. So you have to set this to 1 day so that every client gets his IP address. DNS is allowed here, or the DNS dynamic update here. I don't use these other settings here. Then here I see the scope with the address pool here, as mentioned before. Here I see the address leases, and here I can see every client with its MAC address and how long the lease expiration is. Here I have reservations, so I can say, for example, the MAC address of this network card here. I think I won't cannot copy it, so I say client 1 gets, for example, this IP address here, and I enter the network interface from the right window. And say add. So now I have used a so-called static IP, or no, it's not really a static IP address here, it's a static DHCP address or a DHCP reservation. And so this client will ever get, with this MAC address here on this network card, he will ever get this IP address after every reboot, after 10 weeks and forever, until I change this setting here. Scope options here, you can see which information your DHCP server provides to the client. Here, for example, it's the DNS servers, and here it's the DNS domain name here. And we won't use any policies here. And you see that you can provide several informations to your clients for the scope here, for example, for all scopes here. If you go to the server options, then here for the scope, and then again for your DHCP reservations. So here I will now go to ipconfig release and then renew to assign a new IP address here and to check if this works now. This may take a while. So here in my first test it doesn't work really well. I will check a few settings here. So I will go to the co-op server here and say add remove bindings. And now here I can say on which network interfaces the Windows server should ask and listen, and ask for DHCP clients. So I disable this here because I want to do this only on the private LAN here. Fine. And the next thing here is we go to the network settings of this interface card here and disable the IPv6 protocol here and here too, because we don't assign IPv6 addresses now. So this is our card and we will disable it here. Then also on the second server I can say this is the private LAN, for example, and this is my Wi-Fi connection to the outside world. I can also unplug this card here, because then all the DHCP assignments will go a bit faster. So now I have troubleshooted this issue here, and I have found the solution. If you have a network card on this network here with this subnet mask, you cannot assign DHCP addresses of a 4-rank. DHCP range here stands 17 and here 16. So what we have done here now is we created a second scope here with the exact same settings as here. So if I go to properties here, I have set start IP address from 100 to 200 for 1 day lease duration. Always dynamically update DNS records here, and the same as mentioned before. Here is the address pool, and here now are the address leases. In the scope options you will find the DNS server, and we can also say configure options here, and then I can add the DNS domain name corp.zz here, for example, say apply, okay, and now if I say ipconfig release and ipconfig renew, I will get the right IP address here. And now if I go for reservation here and I use the MAC address here from this network card, I say client 1 1.100, also 105, for example, and re-enter this MAC address here. Then say add, close, and now I have the same reservation here. I will do a release first, and then ipconfig renew, and I will get the 105 here. What we can also try here is, okay, for example, to copy the MAC address here, delete this reservation, and try to do reservation outside of our DHCP range, if this works. I have never tried this before. As a client 1.1.2, for example, and then paste the MAC address here, say add, and now we will try this one. ipconfig renew, hit enter, and you see that it makes no difference if this reservation is inside the scope or outside the scope. For the finish of our DHCP server test, I have assigned a few I've added a few new private LAN network adapter cards here to our DNS server, so that you can see a bit more things in our Windows DNS server here. So you see how it looks like if you have more than one client here. You can right click every client and add this to allow or deny filter, or make this IP address to this client, for example, to a reservation here. Or you can delete this assigned IP address so that the client immediately gets a new one until he reboots the next time. What now also makes sense is that you go to your DNS server and configure your IP addresses here for example, both networks. Like this here, you can make a reverse lookup zone for 172.16.1 and say next, next. Now we allow this dynamic updates here immediately. Then I can enter by the name service list the new IP address here, say OK, apply here, and edit this to the fully qualified domain name. So now this server has two IP addresses, and now there are two A records here. I will now go to this A record here and update the associated pointer record here and also here. So after I rebooted both machines here, you see in the DNS manager that you have several entries here for pointer records to all IP addresses of DNS server 2. This is now the dynamic update function, which allows that the DHCP server tells the DNS server about the assigned IP addresses here from this scope. So I will now try to make an NS lookup for the DNS server 2.corp.zz, and I will get only the first one. Now I will try the same with its IP address here, for example like this one here, and you see that it works in both directions. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope you seeing in the next one.